Bosun down bushcraft, and today we are making wine, or to be more specific, pumpkin wine. A bit of a special recipe of mine that started quite a long old time ago when for Halloween, obviously, kids and pumpkins, they love carving them. Quite enjoy it myself. And at the end of Halloween, there was obviously a lot of these pumpkins knocking about, lying around. And even though pumpkins are perfectly edible, nobody really bothers with that anymore. I don't think most people would know where to sort of begin with recipes for cooking pumpkins. So because I have been making my own wines and things for quite a long time now, I decided, well, maybe I could make my own special Halloween wine using the leftover pumpkins, which I did quite a few years ago. It turned out to be quite successful, and I've been doing it ever since, every Halloween, as it is that special time of year now where Halloween has ended, and there's plenty of these big orange jobbies lying around that nobody really wants and nobody really knows what to do with. So bushcraft wise, you're probably thinking, well, why are we making wine? I'll tell you why. Because bushcrafting without a good drink in the end of the evening, that's just sitting in the woods. Or at least that's my personal opinion. What's the point in going out there, putting out all that effort, if you can't spend time with friends and have a pleasant drink? Although, calling my skrumpkin wine a pleasant drink is probably putting it a little bit too casual. As to say pleasant, it's more like rocket fuel. So, just here, sat on this table, is a barrel of my skrumpkin wine, and if you can just see there, bubbling away as it's reacting like mad at the moment, and all that lovely yeast in there is converting all that sugar into alcohol for us, and then the byproduct of that is a load of carbon dioxide blowing out of this lovely little trap at the top. Now, if you are unfamiliar with wine making and the process there of it, as I've just said, yeast converts sugar into alcohol, basically, and that little device that you've seen bubbling it's an air trap, and what that does is it lets the gas out but stops your ambient air getting back in, which could carry infections in. But it also, because of that little water trap there, it stops things like fruit flies and other such things from getting into your wine and turning it into vinegar and basically making it useless and undrinkable, really. Now, winemaking is incredibly simple. You can go online and read about it. You can buy books about it that make it seem fantastically complex. 5 milliliters of this, oh, just that, all specific measurements for that. Frankly, utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. Now, if you want to make yourself some Pinot Grigio sort of exact recipe stuff, that's fine. Follow the exact instructions. That is not what I'm saying. But you can make wine as simply as fruit, water, sugar, yeast, couple of weeks, bada bing, it's wine. Yeah. Now you can go as complicated or as simple as you want, but the root process for producing all alcohol starts with some fruit or vegetable matter, sugar, yeast, and a little bit of thyme, and that will make alcohol. A long time ago, I used to try these recipes where it was really dead specific, and I just went, nah, no, I understand how the process works, I'm just going to come up with my own. I've made many. You can make it from all sorts, nettle, you can make it from tea, you can make it from oranges, apples, any fruit, you name it. Obviously, good old grapes are one of the oldest favourites for making wine. That's actually mostly because it's not really anything to do with flavour, to be fair. The reason why grapes became the biggest staple of winemaking is actually because, particularly if you look a long time ago, they pretty much do it all themselves. All you do is squeeze them into a juice and pretty much leave them, because they have a very high sugar content of their own for the yeast to react with, but also naturally grown grapes will have their own yeast even on their skins. So pretty much they just used to, everybody's probably seen grape pressing, when you get a load of people stamping on the grapes. that juice would pretty much sit in a barrel and turn itself into wine. I imagine there's a little more to it these days because obviously different qualities and flavours and all of that, but grapes would be the favourite because they can just make their own wine. And if you go back even older, you want to talk about like your Vikings with mead and stuff like that, and a lot of the times there's a lot of ways you can get naturally occurring yeast. Beech bark is one of the oldest ones. There's usually quite a few different strains of yeast that will grow on the barks of a lot of different trees. Always good to look into if you were if you're in a survival situation and you just couldn't live without a drink, but within a good 4 or 5 days, if you knew what you do, you could probably make yourself something that would do the job. But we're not going to be using bark and stuff today. We're just going to use yeast that I have purchased because I don't want it to go funny. Now, obviously, if you look back to the times where people were drinking beer, like most of the time, I say medieval era, everybody was drinking beer all the time. Not because they were alcoholics, but because it was one of the easiest ways for them to make large quantities of water safe. So a lot of those sorts of beers and wines and things, they might not have actually been all that strong, but they'd have been brewing them just because the brewing process itself kills all the bacteria in the water. So anything that's been brewed, the water, the veg or anything, once the brewing process has stopped, it is pretty much safe. And it's quite interesting that there's quite a few plants that you can brew wine out of that you can't eat. They're poisonous if you eat them, but if you brew them, it makes them safe. I'm not advising you to go out, find some deadly nightshade and try and turn it into wine with that though, so please don't do that. If you insist on using dangerous plants, please do your research and make sure you've got it right. Strangely enough, a friend of mine, one of the most interesting things that he brewed was oak leaf wine. That probably doesn't sound very nice because obviously oak has a lot of tannin in it, and it's oak wood that gives you that flavour in your red wines when you get that dry flavour. That's actually tannin that causes that, but tannin is mildly poisonous, particularly to humans. It can, in large doses, cause liver failure and things like that. But there is a process you can go through where you can actually use oak leaves to brew wine, and I was really surprised because that was one of the nicest wines ever. It was bizarrely light and bizarrely fruity. So by all means, do a bit of research and look at the strange and wondrous things that you can make wines out of. So we're going to get on with this. The first thing I like to do is, before I get through the gianty pumpkins, is get the actual fruits all cut up into the pan and ready to boil. So we're going to do that first. I'm going to chuck the sugar out of the way for the moment. I am not going to tell everybody my exact recipe for this, as I'm sure any of my friends who are watching will be quite annoyed with that, as they've been after my skrumpkin recipe for quite a long time, and it is a secret. So believe me, in no means do the things that you're going to see today, they're not actually the exact recipe of this rather rocket fuel-y Halloween mixture that I created a while ago. There'll be a few parts of it I'm just going to leave out. You guys probably won't care. And it still, if you followed exactly what I'm doing, it still would make wine, and it still would make a pumpkin wine. It just won't be exactly the same as my original. Right then, first things first, let's get some fruit on the go. Now, what I like to do with most of the fruits is, because with winemaking you don't always have to boil things or anything like that, which is sometimes what you'll see people doing a lot, is boiling the fruits, which I'm going to boil them, but the first thing I'm going to do is squeeze them all and wring them all out and get as much of the natural juice out as I can first before I boil them. And then I just found that works better. Plus, if you've damaged the fruit, if you've squashed the fruit, obviously it makes the boiling process quite a bit more efficient, and you will get a lot more out of it. And this is why the sugar to fruit ratio is quite important with wine, because let's say if you were making a gallon of wine, so about 5 litres, you would need only about 1 kilo of sugar in that gallon of wine to get it around the 10-12% volume in strength. But the variable factor, the thing that's going to be different that you're never going to really know, is how much sugar you've got in your fruit materials, yeah? So that's another reason why this pumpkin wine, the skrumpkin, ends up a bit like rocket fuel, is because I usually put quite a bit more sugar in than 1 kilo per gallon, because I make it in 25 litre vats. And that usually, depending on the yeast you've got, takes it upwards of 20%. So it's quite potent stuff, really. But for any normal wine, like your elderberry or your elderflower or May blossom, which is the flower of a hawthorn tree, and it's called May blossom because it usually comes about in May. 1 kilo of sugar per 5 litres of it will make a good, strong enough, 10 to 12% noticeably strong wine. Your elderflowers and things like that, anything that creates a clear liquid, a clear wine, like a white wine, those are your easiest ones. They're usually ready quicker and nice and crisp tasting and pretty easy to work with. Elderflower is a lovely one, but then again, May Blossom's a gorgeous one as well. Right. Trouble is, I'm in quite a confined space and I'm trying to get myself on the camera and what I'm doing. So there we go, that's the grapes pretty much. Oh yes. Lovely. You know how much juice there is in grapes. Squishing. There's actually a grapevine in the backyard, and earlier on this year I did make a wine from all the grapes that came off that. This year's grow season for grapes has been a bit poor, to be honest with you. It's been a bit too wet. So the grapes were teeny weeny. Doesn't really matter, it makes no difference for wine making, obviously how small the grapes are. That's a really good thing with making wine as well, is it doesn't matter if the fruits that you've got, that you're using, doesn't matter if they're old, if they're going a bit funny, if they look a bit weird. Even to an extent, if they've gone a bit mouldy, just give them a wash. The brewing process will sort it out. Plus, if you do get fruit that's questionable, a bit mouldy, get it in a pan, boil the living hell out of it. You're still going to get all that flavour and all of those sugars that you want out of it. And obviously the boiling process, anything nasty that might be on it, it will make it safe. So brewing wine is a great way to use up old, slightly not really edible fruit. As I'm sure a lot of people will tell you though, so is making jams and chutneys and things like that. It's a great way to use old fruit and then preserve it at the same time. And that plum really did quite badly look like a bottom. Oh dear. So I'm only cutting these up instead of just squeezing them out because I want to get the seeds out of them. Try and avoid boiling seeds and stems into wines that you're making. Generally they can really affect the flavour, but if you get it wrong, and I'm not going to give you an exact list of which ones can and can't do this because it can be quite long and I might be wrong, but some seeds through the boiling process can create nasty chemicals and poisons. There are even some seeds that you can boil them, you can accidentally get cyanide out of them, and you don't want that. I highly doubt that's plum seeds, but I know that by boiling in seeds and stems and stuff, you quite often make the flavour better. Just get what's left of them plums and good old smashing. So, as I said with the seeds, same sort of rule applies to skins. Now obviously some fruits are going to have skins that will enhance the flavour, make it better. Plums are one of them. Plum skins, very nice, got a good flavour to them. Lemon and lime skins, and a lot of members of the citrus family though, what they will tend to do is make things very bitter and very tart. Now, although it's not the easiest thing in the world, and it certainly is not my favouriteest thing to do, I would strongly recommend, particularly with limes, that you peel them. It is a pain in the backside peeling a lime. If anybody knows of a better way to peel a lime, please let me know, because this bit takes a while. But like I say, I've made them before where I've left the skins on lemons and limes, and it has just made them really very bitter and still drink them though. Just chuck some Vimto in or something. I've actually just discovered a easier way to peel a lime. If you cut it down its length, not across the middle, but down its actual length, so you've still got the little nipply bit at the top there, and then you can stick your finger in that bit, like that, or your thumb, as it would be in this case, and literally just sort of half shell it, flip it out, like that. And then you've got the whole piece of the rind off. I know I've squashed it to bits, but that doesn't matter because that's kind of what I wanted. Yes. Wow. This is where you'd find out if you had any little paper cuts on your hands or anything like that. Alright then. Time to tackle this big chappy. I don't really know much about anything really. Chopping up pineapple, I usually just attack it. I'm sure there's probably some proper way that hopefully some pineapple expert might see this video and comment and say, "Dan, that's the Muppet way of doing it. Let me show you how you prepare a pineapple." And if anybody does know a better way, please tell me. I'm not even that fussy with it. I just hack the thing up. But I've always done this every time I've made this particular wine, and I've never had an issue. So I shall probably just continue to do it my own way anyway. And I know that usually they take the middle of the pineapple out. I don't know why. Is it because it's tough or something? Because personally, I'm just going to delicately cut that middle bit out. Well, not the best tasting. No, it's a bit chewy, but oh well. I aren't eating it, so. Right then, so that's pretty much all of the fruit, and I've added a few little secrety bits whilst I was not recording. I'll just give it a jolly good mush up. Oh, look at that. See, look at that, you can't see, can you? Get in there. Oh, get amongst it. Look at that. Good, gooey. Yeah, the fun parts. Excellent. Obviously, you guys can't smell that, but wow, beautiful. So what I'm going to do now is top it off with some fresh water. and then put it to the boil. So I've got to go out and do some otherwise dad duty thing. Hello, buddy. Oh, hello, mate. Are you getting on YouTube? Hey. Oh, are you getting on YouTube? Are you my little bushcraft doggy? Hmm? So, yeah, a little too friendly sometimes, aren't you, mate? Hmm? You just want to cuddle your little teddy bear. Because I've got to pop out, otherwise usually what I do is bring it to the boil on the paraffin stove, like you saw in the lamp lighting videos that I use quite a lot. But because I'm going to go out and get some other little jobs done, I'm going to leave it on top of the stove, and that'll bring it to a relatively nice little simmer. It won't boil over though or anything. This stove's got a water jacket around the inside of it, so although you can like get water hot enough from the top of it to like make a coffee or a brew, it won't boil furiously because the top of it only gets to about 85, 90, 95 degrees Celsius when it's running pretty hot. So as it's basically investing most of its heat into the actual radiators of the house and the water tank. So I'll leave it on there whilst I'm doing my doings. That'll get it all nice and warm. Start softening the fruit up, and then when I get in a bit, I'll pop it on the old paraffin blower and get it up to a nice rolling boil. What's up, mate? Big softy. Oh, my little mate. Oh. Right then, so the old fruit mix has been on a nice slow boil for a good couple of hours. Take a look at that. Very nice. Looks like I'm going to put that in a cake or some sort of tart or something, doesn't it? Oh, God. I wish you could smell that. That is absolutely beautiful. I just want to stick a spoon in it and eat it. So we've got now another one of these brewing barrels, these brew kegs. Lovely things. These are about, well, I actually bought them all a good few years ago. They were about 15, 20 pounds back then, so who knows, with modern inflation that's going on at the moment, they could be 30, 40 quid. You might even have to remortgage your house to get them, because you know what the world's currently like where the inflation's concerned. But I wouldn't seriously expect them to be more than about £25 for a 25 litre barrel. You can get glass demijohns in 5 litre, 20 litre. Really up to you what you want to choose to use equipment wise. Now this one has already been sterilised and cleaned. I did that a couple of days ago, and then I've left it sealed up. There's lots of things out there that you can use to sterilise them. A good safe one would be things like the Milton steriliser that you use for baby bottles and things like that. That's pretty good to use. What I personally do is I just chuck a load of unscented normal bleach in there, fill it with water, leave it for a good few hours, and then just make sure I've given it a really good thorough rinse and made sure that you can't smell any remnants of bleach left over, at which point it's fine to use. I have always done that and I've never had a problem with that. If you are at all concerned, then find a different steriliser. There's a lot of them out there, perfectly safe for sterilising and stuff. I know a lot of people would get funny about it when you say, oh, I use bleach for that, but people really sort of misunderstand what bleach is. If you look online, there are actually ratios of how much bleach you can add to the water of a fish tank whilst the fish are in there, to use it to clean the water and to clean certain parasites and stuff like that off the fish themselves. If you want to look at that, please do research it. Don't just go chucking bleach in fish tanks. It's obviously a very small quantity versus what gallon your tank is and stuff like that, but it can be used for that purposes. I'm sure most people are aware that chlorine that is used to sterilise our drinking water at source and the very stuff that goes into swimming pools It is actually just a different form of bleach. But anybody who's ever worked at a swimming pool will know there's very finite rates of what you can and can't put in. So just make sure if you have used a product such as bleach to give it a jolly good cleaning out. This has sat for over a day. There's absolutely no smell of bleach or chlorine in there. And bizarrely, even though it's sat for a day full of bleach and it's been well rinsed, the only thing I can smell is just the slightest fragrance of the last wine that I made in there. So even though it's been soaked in that, this is cooking grade plastic, but to an extent some smell will obviously still soak into it and remain. And that's why some of my friends that I've taught to brew over the years swear by glass. I don't mind using glass, it's just they're easy to break. And when you've got, your kids and your dogs and everything running around and you're doing stuff like this, I don't want a 20-litre vat of wine smashed. That would just ruin quite a lot of carpet and stuff. So here is now the time-consuming part. This is going to take a little while because ideally what I want to do is remove as much of the fruit matter out of the wine as possible. I don't want great chunks of fruit going into it. And that's because the more stuff that's in there, it'll form a cake as it brews on the bottom, what you'd call a must. Right now, some wines work like that. You actually use the fruit pulp. It's called an on-must wine. I very rarely do that because if you leave it sat on that must for too long, it makes it bitter and nasty. And at some point when the brewing process has gone to a certain level and it's stopped reacting, so the yeast has done its work, you transfer it to a clean barrel so that you can get it away from all that stuff that naturally settles to the bottom in it. So what I want to do is remove as much of this fruit matter as possible. Obviously this boiled fruit's going to clog up all those little holes in your sieve, so it's going to take it quite a while to strain out. So when you're getting it out in your jug, keep your jug pressed up against the side of the pan and try and avoid as much of that fruit matter getting in your jug to start with as possible, because obviously this is going to take a while either way. Look at that. Oh, I'm going to have a cheeky sip of that. My word, that'll cure what ails you. Whew. If you're lacking in vitamin C, you ain't getting scurvy with that. I'm just going to pour her in. First couple of scoop loads always go through nice and smooth. My word, I tell you what, mix that in a pot with a couple of shots of whiskey, you could sell that as a Victorian cure-all. In fact, I might give it a flashy name and then sell it as an energy drink. It's got to be better for you than some of the energy drinks out there. It is, after all, just boiled fruit and a few of my secret ingredients, which are all natural. There's nothing dodgy in them whatsoever. And that's a great reason to make wine, is especially if anybody out there grows their own fruit and veg and stuff, you're using your own natural ingredients. There's nothing nasty in it. And commercially purchased wines and alcohols, obviously they at some level are using chemicals to either clear them or improve the flavour. They're putting citric acid and stuff in them and all that. You know when you've made something like this though, there's none of that in it. It is just pure material, pure fruit, and the natural process of making alcohol. And homebrew wine, very much like all wines out there, the longer you let it sit, the longer you rest it in a nice dark place, the better it gets. Another reason why I like to brew it in rather large vats like this is because then I can stash a load of it, let it age, and it'll be really nice by the time it's done. That's pretty much all of the juice out of the pan. I'm not going to go nuts and sieve all of this fruit out just yet, You see I've still got all my fruit in there, and there's quite a bit of liquid in the bottom of it. If I can tip it without throwing it, well, no, it's going to go everywhere, so I won't do that. There is still quite a bit of juice in the bottom of there. Now, what I would do is tip all that in the sieve, jug by jug load, let that sieve itself out, get the most of that juice. I'm not going to do that though, because what I'm actually going to do is refill this pan with water, boil it again, and get a little bit more flavour out of all of that fruit, and make the most of it basically. This time this stove had a good clean. Oh well, don't matter if it's dirty, does it? The temperature's going to get to. Anything living on there will soon be dead. Right, let's let that prime. That back to the boil. GoPro stop. Right then, so this is boiled the second time now. It's cooled down, so I'm just going to start saving all of this juice into my brew. Right then, so that is all of the fruity stuff. Strain, still one bit of it left straining. Leave that and get on with this while that strains through. Now to the fun bit, the pumpkins. That'll do. Not as much seeds and things as you'd have expected for a big pumpkin like that. Right then, so when you're working with pumpkins and squashes for the point of brewing, you really want to try and chop them up kind of as small as you can. From the brew perspective, when you're boiling them, you'll get so much more of the flavour and the goodness out of them. Now, even something like a pumpkin or a squash will have some level of natural sugars, which will obviously affect the brew process and increase the strength of it. The pumpkins really, in the pumpkin wine, it forms the body of it, the body of the flavour. It gives it a sort of an earthy density to it, but obviously pumpkin by itself, it's not a particularly flavourable thing. So it doesn't taste of pumpkin, which is the number one question I get. I have made it many times without the pumpkin itself, using just the fruit content that goes into it, and although it is a nice wine, it ain't nowhere near as good as it is for having the pumpkin in it. So I often say to people in this particular wine, the pumpkin is to this wine what the potato is to the vodka. But I guess you'd really have to taste this to believe that. because the first thing people say is, "Ew, doesn't it just taste of pumpkin?" Surprisingly, no, it doesn't. Like I say, without that pumpkin being present, it's a very different flavour. It's not as good, it's not as earthy. And obviously there is a few other ingredients I add that I'm keeping secret. And you can make your own secret recipes if you like. You don't even have to use pumpkin, you can do what you want, but you can make your own secret things, put your own little flavourings in, have people guessing what it is you've done. So there we have the first batch of pumpkin, all nicely chopped and ready to be given a jolly good boil. Oh, right then, so the pumpkin has been bubbling away for a good while now, and I've actually left it just on the stove while I've been out doing various dad things. So what I'm going to do now is, well, I've left it in the pioneer in the sink, surrounded by cold water to cool it down, so that I can throw it in here a bit quicker and get the next batch of pumpkin chopped up and done. But now that we've got the fruit juice in the bottom of there, this is a great time to add the sugar. And like I said, when adding sugar, for most wines, to be quite honest with you, 1 kilo of sugar will be more, I've already mentioned this, but just refresh your memories. A kilo of sugar is more than enough for a gallon of wine. So, you know, for about every 5 litres, a kilo is more than enough. And when I say more than enough, if you're using fruits like grapes and things like that have quite a lot of their own natural sugar in them, then a kilo of sugar is actually going to be a lot. It's gonna take it up to quite a strength. But don't think that you can just keep throwing sugar at it and that will make it stronger, stronger, and stronger and stronger. There is a limit to the strength that yeasts can take it to. Now, you can get specialised yeasts that can take it up to a higher percentage, but normal sort of wine yeasts like this one start to bottle out around the 20, 23, 24, 25% of alcohol. It starts to actually then kill the yeast itself. You can get different yeasts, you can get genetically modified yeasts that will do it stronger a little, but to be fair, once you start getting upwards of like the 28%, really you're looking at like distilling to turn it into liquors and whiskies, and that's something, distilling and stuff, that's something I've never actually personally dabbled in yet. Right then, that's all the sugar we need. Won't be adding any more of that. Boiled pumpkins. Have a look at that. Let's get the camera on. Whee. Oh yeah, and again, oh, the aroma. So nice. Obviously you guys can't smell it. I say so nice. Maybe not everybody actually likes the smell of boiled pumpkin, but I do. It's very, very nice. I washed up earlier, so my stuff's all over the place. And again, exactly the same as I did with the fruit. I'll just try and use the jug itself to keep as many pumpkin lumps out as I can, so that I can keep the sieve clear for now. But obviously, eventually, all of that pumpkin that's in there is going to spend a bit of time in the sieve, just letting the water drip out of it. As much juice as I can get for the moment, so now it's time to start scooping pumpkin up. give that a couple of minutes, let it strain through. Smells so good. How many people eat pumpkin these days, do they? Don't know why. It's perfectly pleasant. Well, that's the first batch of pumpkin straining into the barrel. So I'm back to slicing pumpkin. Right then, finally got all of the pumpkin boiled. Here is the last pan of it. I've literally only just finished boiling it, so that it's, I was just leaving it in a big sink full of cold water to try and cool it a little bit. Never mind the hat, it was raining earlier and I stuck it on in the rain because it's waxed leather, and I thought, you know, I'm just going to wear it. And this isn't skrumpkin wine, this is grape wine from our own grapevine that grows out the back there. Very nice. Very nice stuff. Anywho, let's get the last of the pumpkin strained off into the barrel. So that's the last of the pumpkin sieved in, and the only thing we need to do now is top it off with fresh water. So there we are, all finished, topped up with water. It's got all my fruit pumpkin and everything in it. The only thing that remains to be done is to put the yeast in. Now, I have actually put some yeast in it before now, and I've basically got it started brewing before we got to the end, which is fine. Sometimes people will make a yeast starter, which is basically you make a little pot of brewing liquid that you put in, and it just speeds it up. You don't need to, there's no reason you need to or anything like that. But there's no reason not to neither. So if you're halfway up a barrel filling up, you can start it brewing straight off by putting the yeast in. There's no problem with that. Just at that point, you've got to be careful of the temperatures of the liquids that you put in it. So if you're going to put hot liquids in there, you're going to kill your yeast. If you're going to put freezing cold liquids in there, you're going to kill your yeasts, which is why a lot of people will go, nah, what we'll do is we'll fill it with everything we want to fill it with. We'll let it get to room temperature, and then we'll put the yeast in. Oh, that's good stuff. But it's entirely up to you what you do. So like I say, I have already put quite a bit of yeast in this. I've only got to top it up with a little bit more. As a general rule of thumb, and like I say, a lot of wines are different, and if you look online, you'll find a billion different recipes. Some of them are incredibly specific. I don't work like that. I play a lot of it by ear. I have never yet had a bad wine or a failed wine. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there that consider themselves quite professional brewers who would like to disagree with a lot of the stuff I've said. And if there is anybody out there who watches this, by all means get in touch, come round, try my wine, see what you think then. Because it isn't that specific, it isn't an exact science, and this particular wine, the skrumpkin, is a recipe I created some years ago. I've been replicating it year on year, identical, and you know, I have never had two the same. Never had two the same. So it's not an exact science. As a general rule of thumb though, for yeast, you want about 5 grams per gallon. Some will say less, some will say more, but you won't go wrong with about 5 grams per gallon of wine. Yeah, so for every 5 litres, about 5 grams. The reality is, if you put less in, it's still going to work, it's still going to complete, it's still going to finish, it's just probably going to take a little bit longer. If you put more in, it might run a little quicker, but then it might also starve itself of oxygen in the liquid. That's where you can get overcomplicated. I always think with it, find a happy medium and leave it alone. The real trick with brewing wine is forgetfulness is kind of good, to be honest with you. If you brew in a vat of wine and you forget about it for a long time, generally it comes out better. The more you faff around with it, the more you keep checking on it and stuff like that, the worse it's going to get. And wine will sit in a vat for ages. So what I need to do with this now, get it brewing, and once all the bubbliness has stopped in the traps, like this one's doing quite healthily, you can't see, I think there's a door in your way. Once that bubbliness has stopped, what I then have to do is transfer the wine into a clean vat and leave all the crud out that gathers at the bottom from the brewing process. That's what you would do once it stopped bubbling. So once all those bubbles have stopped and you've given it a good couple of days to make sure that it's stopped brewing, transfer it to a clean vat and get as much of the clean wine as you can out and let it sit. And because it's wine, the longer you let it sit, really the better. It's one of those things. Pretty much though, as soon as the bubbling is finished, it is ready to drink. And please don't drink it while it's still bubbling and still reacting. You will most likely give yourself gut rot and make yourself sick. If the yeast is all still active, that's not a good thing. You don't want to drink that. So I'm just going to whop some yeast in. Like I say, I've already yeasted it before, so I don't measure anymore. I used to years ago, and this is like I say, I have been brewing wine and beer and stuff. I've been making it for absolute years, never had a bad one yet, and I've really found ways to simplify the process as much as I can, because there are people out there that turn it into what they say is an art form, and it proper tickles me when you'll go out and you'll buy yourself a good beer and it'll say on it, crafted by master brewers, and I'm like, no, I brew stuff and ain't no such thing as a master brewer. Your all chances and hope has always selected this version of hops, that version of this version of... No, it's not that kind of thing. A recipe's a recipe, come up with a good one, stick with it. So, but it's up to you guys. You can go as finite as you want. Do your own research is really the thing. So I'm going to seal this puppy up, and then it's probably, most wines will be finished brewing within a couple of weeks. But skrumpkin, I know this one very personally because I created it. This one's going to take at least a month to finish what it's doing, to then be transferred to a clean vat. So what I'm going to do is I'll put this video up that'll show you all of this, and then when it is ready I'll make a part 2 and show you the actual changing the barrel process, letting it age a bit, and then eventually drinking it. But I'll show you I'll have a drink of it in the woods and show you something with a fire, a bit more fun. So I'm going to seal this all up. Always remember, depending on the type of air trap you buy, either remove the whole trap, or with these ones you can just take the top cap out, because what you don't want to happen is when you're moving the top off and on, if that top's in, or if it's one of the curly, more prettier versions of the air trap, what it can do is under the air pressure suck that water back in and drop it into your wine or your beer, and you don't want that because that will be infected with stuff. That's the reason it's there, is to catch any infections in the air, any flies, any bugs that might want to get in. So if you don't have one with the removable top, just pull the thing out while you fasten the top down. Screw that up nice and tight. And then we get the trap in. There we go. And that is complete and can be left to brew. Now, as you can see, this one here is considerably different colour to the first barrel. This one has gone that lovely pale orange colour that skrumpkin always is. This one's very red, even though they're exactly the same, they've got the exact same ingredients in them. This one obviously is brand new and young. Now this one started out the same colour, and what happens is, as the brewing process goes, the brewing process tends to strip a lot of colour out, but because pumpkin's a root vegetable, the colour has a bit more of an adamancy about it. So over the next couple of days, week or so, this one will change colour from being that purpley red to displaying the orange of the pumpkin, just like this first barrel, which is kind of weird. But like, if you do start brewing your own stuff, it is chemistry. It is a bit of a weird thing. So I'm going to let these two chaps do what they do. I'm going to let them brew, let them do what exactly it is that skrumpkin does, and I will get back to you with a second video about how they are when they're done. Other than that though, there's not a lot more for me to say other than get brewing, get bushcrafting, get out there and have fun, And if you have any questions at all about brewing, like I said, there's a wealth of information out there, but if you want to ask a question that just cuts through all the nonsense and gets straight to the nitty-gritty of it, or if you try brewing and you have a problem and you don't understand what's happened, please feel free to message me or stick a comment on the video. I'll get back to you, and I've got years of experience doing this. I am by no means an expert with brewing at all. That is not what I'm saying. I have come up with my own way of dealing with it. But the reality is simplicity and cleanliness. Make sure your equipment's clean. Keep the process as simple as you can. You'll usually get something good. So any questions, please feel free to message me, stick a comment on the video. Other than that, folks, get yourselves out, get yourselves bushcrafting, get yourselves brewing. Please learn about wild ingredients that you can brew from, because that's as bushcraft as it gets, is going out in the good times of year, collecting things to brew from. It's one of the things I enjoy most about brewing, but just have fun with it. Bosun Dan out.